Hey guys, Abel speaking here, and this time I actually got inspired to record this video, oddly enough, because I actually had a pretty crappy night of sleep. I slept maybe 4 or 5 hours, but maybe even less, and to be honest, I realized pretty early on that this was not going to be a good night of sleep at around 3 a.m., so I was just longing for the night to be over. And now that it's all over with, and obviously I'm not feeling like I'm on top of the world, I decided that I would record this little video on my sort of unconventional thoughts and tips on how to sleep better. And also share my little story of how I overcame my now luckily past sleeping problems. So the first thing that I'd like to say is I, as a health conscious individual, 100% acknowledge that getting solid, restful sleep is incredibly good for you. However, in recent years, I do see a trend in the fitness industry regarding this topic that I just don't particularly like. And specifically, I mean that we demonize stress and lack of sleep to the point where it actually becomes counterproductive. And particularly, I mean that it disempowers people. It's kind of a different mindset than what we have, for example, regarding dieting. So when we diet, we give ourselves all these nice mental tools of how to cope with things and telling ourselves that we will be just fine if we do the right things, despite of the fact that we are starving our body. But when we don't sleep enough or when we stress, it's like all cut and dry. Like if you don't sleep enough, you're fucked. Basically, that's the message. Now, the 2 points that I think are worth mentioning about this is that one, I see all these articles detailing all the horrible things that will happen to you if you don't sleep enough, but they're not so hot on the remedy, on actually what to do if you want to sleep better. So, of course, there are the kind of usual things like make your room dark or don't drink a lot of fluids before bed. But honestly, for some people who are truly stressed out, these things might just not cut it. And the second point is asking the question, like, why is that the case? Why are they not so, outspoken about what to do if you want to sleep better? And I think the explanation there is simply that sleep, unlike exercise or healthy eating, is not something that you do actively, right? I mean, you can force yourself to go to the gym. You can just push through discipline and sheer willpower. Sleep is, well, it just kind of happens, right? It's not something that you can force, that you can push. In fact, the more you force it, the less it tends to happen. Let me illustrate what I mean by kind of an example. Let me know if this sounds familiar to you. You wake up in the middle of the night and you know that in a couple of hours you need to be awake because you have something important coming up, like an exam or a job interview. So you try to fall back asleep, but you toss and turn and you start to get worried, like, oh my God, I'm not falling back asleep. And you start freaking out, and all of a sudden you're completely awake, and now you're definitely not getting the sleep that you wanted. And why did this all happen? Simply because you were so scared of not getting enough sleep. So with all that fear, you just caused exactly that you feared. This is exactly the problem that I had back in about 2012. For months on end, I just couldn't get more than 4 or 5 hours of sleep per night, even though I was doing all the right things that I thought I could do, which was going to bed on time and eating and drinking the right things before bed. I just still couldn't get enough sleep. And why? Simply because I was so freaking obsessed over not getting enough sleep. So how did I fix it? Well, the remedy is kind of unconventional, but I think to some of you, this might just about be the only thing that will actually work. So I simply stopped caring. If I didn't sleep enough, I just said, well, I just didn't sleep enough. I don't give a shit. I'm just gonna do my thing. I'm still gonna work out as if nothing happened. I'm still gonna have fun as if nothing happened. And when I started dating my girlfriend at the time, obviously in the beginning stages, that meant not getting as much sleep as necessary. I didn't care. I just got up, caffeinated up a little bit, and went on doing my thing. I just embraced my sleep deprivation. I even joked to my friends about how little I slept. And you know the weird thing that started happening? I actually started sleeping better. In fact, a couple of months down the road, I started sleeping like a freaking baby. for the longest time before that, I could not get more than like 8 hours of sleep, even when I was completely exhausted on the weekends, for example. Now I started sleeping like 9.5, and 10 hours on some days. And how? Simply because I was no longer obsessing over getting enough sleep. In fact, what I do these days when I go through a stressful period, like an exam period, and I don't sleep enough, is I sit down with a nice black cup of coffee, and I take my journal, I have a journal, and I start writing things down like, well, I didn't sleep enough, and I didn't sleep well. Well, this is not the first time it happened in my life, and it's certainly not the last time this will happen either. These things just happen in life. Amazing things have happened to me before, despite sleep deprivation, and amazing things will happen again. In fact, on the big scheme of things, I'm still writing this, how much does this even matter? I mean, realistically speaking, I have at least another 60 years to live, which means I have another 2,200 or so days, which means I have another 2,200 occasions to attempt to sleep better, which means I have another 175,000 hours to sleep on average if I aim for an average of 8 hours per night. So does it really matter that on this particular day I only got 6 or 5 or 4 hours instead of 8? Not really. In fact, let's look at some of the role models I have who accomplished great things in this world. I mean, some of them got by for decades pretty much on like negative hours of sleep per night. Now, that's not to say that that's ideal, but it does suggest that I will be just fine by not sleeping enough for today or maybe even tomorrow. So I would tell myself these things, and surely it would always calm me completely down. And 9 times out of 10, the following night, I would get a very nice, restful sleep. The other thing that's worth reiterating here is that I've noticed this on myself too, that by giving too much thought of these long descriptions of horrible physiologic and psychologic things that will happen if you don't sleep enough, I started viewing stress and lack of sleep as this scary, demonic thing that I just needed to avoid at all costs. And if I couldn't avoid it, then I just absolutely have no control over these horrible things that will happen, like increased hunger and bad decision making and irritability. I just felt like I have absolutely no control over these things. And I think regardless of what the science is saying, this is just not a productive mindset to have. Similarly, of when you're dieting, it's just not good to view yourself as this fragile little weak thing with low energy levels. Similarly, if you're not sleeping enough, you shouldn't view yourself as this powerless entity with no control over what you're doing and how you're reacting to things. Now, all of that said, you should aim for improving what you can. So you should, of course, go to bed on time, and you should, of course, not drink a whole bunch of fluids before you go to bed. And you should make your room dark and pleasantly cool and all of these things. But I think in conjunction with all of these things, you should also just not obsess over it, and you will be fine. Now, as closing, I will put some of the things here on the screen that helped me over the past couple of years to sleep better. So these are practical guides. And guys, thanks for watching. I hope you found this video informative, even though it was a bit of a rambling and kind of unconventional. But let me know what you think. Let me know what helped you to sleep better and what your challenges were in this regard, if there were any. And subscribe if you liked it, and see you next time.